You ever see a WrestleMania poster and then get confused when the wrestler featured wasn't actually in the advertised match? It's because plans change, pal. This must be pretty bad if you're the person in question on a regular show, but WrestleMania, like a kick in the teeth, especially if it's the main event, and yes, that's happened more than once. Can only imagine the mental healing you need after that, but I'm Simon from What Culture. Please hit that subscribe button, and this is 10 wrestlers kicked out of WrestleMania main events. Number 10, Tugboat at WrestleMania 7. Yes, you heard me. We all remember the horrendous build to WrestleMania 7 where we took the Iraq War and tied it into a storyline that saw Hulk Hogan fighting for America. He defeated Sergeant Slaughter in the main event to win the WWF title and finally put this battle to bed. That sounds terrible, but it was the idea. Before we got to Sarge though, Vince McMahon thought about taking Tugboat and turning him into Sheik Tugboat, and again you heard me right, after he had attacked his best friend and pledged allegiance to the enemy. Sheik Tugboat. Now I have literally heard it all. It was Bruce Pritchard and Pat Patterson who thought Slaughter would be a better pick, so urged the boss to change his mind, especially as he was already a proven draw. Pritchard has even talked about this on his podcast, saying that the all-American hero going evil was too good to turn down. Yeah, well, we definitely should have turned this down. Number 9, Mankind at WrestleMania 15. Back at WrestleMania 15, Mankind and the Big Show hit each other with chairs in a very by-the-numbers mid-card match. It was weird as they were huge stars at the time, which is why Mick Foley was back in the main event to referee Stone Cold vs. The Rock and ensure that dastardly corporation didn't interfere. The reason all of this felt so last minute was because at the turn of the year, Foley had been told he would headline alongside Austin and Rocky, and then he didn't. Vince Russo, of all people, was pushing for a triple threat match to close the show, even getting the approval of one Vincent Kennedy McMahon, mostly because everyone thought this was a fitting way to reward Mick, given what he'd done over the last 12 months. We also had this story between The Rock and Mankind, so we could pivot off that, and the spin came from none other than Shawn Michaels. Rumors said it was he who went to Stone Cold and told him this wasn't a good idea, and it must have worked to some degree because it was switched back to a one-on-one affair. Foley has spoken about how losing out felt like a real blow to the point he broke down and started to cry. He felt like his chance had gone, which likely explains why he came back the following year, even though he retired. Number 8, Triple H at WrestleMania 23. Triple H and John Cena were all set to main event WrestleMania 23. It was to be a rematch from their dramatic main event the previous year, and all things considered, it would have been pretty good, and then it fluttered away. Scrapped because the game suffered a horrible quad injury where he tore it off the bone at New Year's Revolution 2007, as DX took on Rated RKO. We wouldn't see trips until SummerSlam, and that meant Mania was gone. It was so close to the show of shows, WWE had to think on their feet, and quite creatively, they shifted across to Shawn Michaels. After all, he was Triple H's best friend, and after beating Edge and Randy Orton on Raw to earn himself an opportunity, it was on. The pair even won the tag team titles, as it was hinted constantly that HBK could turn on Cena at a moment's notice. That actually did happen the Monday after Mania, and it was situations like this that helped Michaels lay claim to his Mr. WrestleMania title. He came in late, smashed it, and was then on to the next outing. Number 7, Chris Benoit at WrestleMania 19. So this is a weird one as you need to know the story first, but there was a period before WrestleMania 19 when Kurt Angle informed Vince McMahon he was not going to be able to fight Brock Lesnar in the main event. His neck was a mess and needed surgery, and he didn't think he'd be able to get through it. New plans were thrust into the works. This is why Brock and Angle were booked to work a title match on the 13th of March 2003 SmackDown, even though that was really close to Mania. Kurt would lose, Lesnar would be the champion, with Chris Benoit subbing in at WrestleMania so that a hard-hitting and technical spectacle could still feature. As Angle said on his podcast though, after some encouraging words from a friendly neighbor and their child who were just so excited to see Kurt in that position, he decided to plow on through and get it done. That's exactly what happened, and it's amazing that neither Lesnar or Angle were more seriously hurt. Never forget, without that mammoth neck, we may never have seen Brock in the ring again, because he landed on his head. Number 6, Chris Jericho at WrestleMania 2000. This one ties into the poster stories we've already talked about at the start of this, and you can find it all on the internet. With a McMahon in every corner, which would be the reason to have a 4-way elimination match as the Mania main event, Triple H had the backing of Stephanie, The Rock would have Vince, Foley made nice with Linda, and I suppose Shane picked the Big Show, even though originally he was going to recruit one Chris Jericho. This has to be true because there's imagery for it, and Jericho himself has talked about it a lot. It all got changed because officials were able to convince Mick Foley to come out of that retirement we mentioned and get the moment he so desperately craved. Chris pulled the short straw and got booted out. There was some nonsense too as well that Jericho was too small to be in this position, which is ludicrous, and instead he had a triple threat match for the Intercontinental and European titles alongside Chris Benoit and Kurt Angle. Number 5, Ric Flair at WrestleMania 8. This one will blow your mind. In 1991 and 1992, Vince McMahon had Hulk Hogan and Ric Flair under the same roof and went through a WrestleMania without doing that match. Truly nuts. As soon as the Nature Boy walked through the door, everybody assumed this was going to be the direction, because how could it not be? It was the two biggest names in the industry going head to head, and was in a way WWF versus WCW. We all wanted that, we still do, alas it never happened. Bruce Pritchard on his podcast has said that in the lead up to the mega event, Hogan versus Flair house shows weren't drawing great, so McMahon decided it shouldn't happen at Mania. And it would be fair to say that a line had been drawn in the sand to the point you picked a side and backed them 100%, but maybe the WWF crowd just wouldn't accept how important Flair was. What really summed it up was, despite going in as the world champion, Rick still didn't main event the thing, although he did have a great match against the Macho Man Randy Savage. Hogan, on the other hand, took on Sid Justice, and the less we talk about that one, the better. It ended in a disqualification. Number 4, Bret Hart at WrestleMania 9. And yet he was so damn close. But if we are going by the letter of the law, which we are, Bret Hart was not the last match at WrestleMania 9. He was moved to the semi-main event when Hulk Hogan bombed out after the Hitman had lost to Yokozuna, for some reason got a title match, and then within 30 seconds, the Hulkster was champion once more. It was terrible. The real frustration was that during Hogan's absence, the company had done all they could to build Hart up, and they were doing a decent job. And sure, numbers weren't going through the roof, but they were steady, and with a bit more love, the upside was there for all to see. We'd also gone all in with this Bret versus Yoko main event as something serious, especially as Zuna had won that year's Rumble with ease. He felt terrifying, so you can just imagine the reaction when Hulk beat him in the blink of an eye, only seconds after Yoko had won the belt. It was just turning the clock back when it was time to move forward. Thankfully, Hart would get his chance 12 months later and also do it again at WrestleMania 12, but still, this is in the history books for all the wrong reasons. Number 3, Shawn Michaels at WrestleMania 13. Shawn Michaels has done it time and time again at WrestleMania. His classic against Kurt Angle, that Razor Ramon ladder match, the Undertaker series, take your pick. In 1997, he likely had the chance to do this again, but HBK decided he didn't want to. After winning the title from Bret Hart at Mania 12, it seemed to make sense that the Hitman would get his win back a year later. That February though, Shawn told the world he was injured, that he'd lost his smile, and that he was done. Gave up the championship, and the rumor at the time, and now, was that he didn't want to lose the title to Bret, so he did this instead. It left Michaels to provide commentary for the Mania 13 main event, which is really weird, whereas Bret Hart went on to have, for my money, one of the best matches in WWE history. The double turn with Stone Cold Steve Austin is a classic, and given that we're almost at the 25-year mark and it still rocks, I don't think it's ever gonna change. Number 2, Randy Orton at WrestleMania 21. Booted is a bit unfair with this one, but we did have a decision to make. We all remember the excellent WrestleMania 21 match where Batista beat Triple H to become the World Heavyweight Champion. Before the animal had been selected, officials were umming and ahhing between him and none other than Randy Orton. Groomed for stardom since 2003, Orton was always going to be a headliner, and it was just a matter of figuring out when he would be ready for the spot. When WWE ran out of stories in the summer of 2004 though, they just hot-shotted all of this instead, had Randy win the world title, and did the planned Orton-Triple H feud months before it was penciled in for. It still took one last turn when it was decided he would figure out a way to reclaim his belt at WrestleMania, but when this from nowhere push didn't really light up the fans, it was all wrapped up at the Rumble, and Batista was moved into his position instead. And look, let's be honest, given what happened, it was 100% the best move. That Triple H Big Dave feud rocked. Number 1, CM Punk at WrestleMania 29. The main event at WrestleMania 28 was once in a lifetime. The Rock and John Cena would clash once and they would never do it again. Ever. So buy the pay-per-view knowing this is only happening once in your life, and that's that. And they did it again 12 months later, because of course. Is this whole madness why there was a big vocal outcry to include CM Punk in the Mania 29 main event? For starters, he had been on a tear as the WWE champion and held the belt for ages, and we were so close. Punk has mentioned this was an idea, and so has The Rock, but when push came to shove, we didn't do it. It really is confusing as it made so much sense with the stories happening at the time. Punk had beef with both Rock and Cena, and while this did give us CM challenging The Undertaker, as we know Punk never really got over this, it was a huge reason why he walked out in 2014. Thankfully today he's moved on and doesn't really care, but still, he wasn't wrong. Doing something different would have not only appeased the fans, but also kept this once-in-a-lifetime tagline alive. Instead, it's gibberish, apart from those who sadly passed away between the two events. Know any other wrestlers that were kicked out of WrestleMania main events? Make sure you let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Then head over to whatculture.com and read yourself some articles. Make sure you follow What Culture on social media. Just search for What Culture and watch more videos here on What Culture Wrestling. The videos are floating around. My name is Simon from What Culture. I always do appreciate your time, and I'll talk to you again very soon.